Hi, this is John Chen, and you are in the API event process. What you don't know about Stop Asian Hate can cost you trillions program. Here we go. Excellent. Hi there. My name is John Chen. I'm the CEO of GeoTeaming, and I'm the author of a book called Engaging Virtual Meetings. But more important than that is I'm Chinese American. I'm actually a third generation Chinese, and my grandfather is a paper son. If anybody knows what a paper son is, hit it in the chat. For those who don't know, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 prevented my grandfather from coming to this country, but there's a loophole in the law, and so basically he bought a birth certificate that came from San Francisco, and that's what allowed him in this country. And that's what we're here to talk about, is the rich history of API and immigration here in the United States, and all the different things that happen to it, and more importantly, is, of course, the title of this program is What You Don't Know About Stop Asian Hate Can Cost You Trillions. What we are is all APIs and allies in the meetings profession field. And today we really want to show you some of the things that we have and the experiences that we're having and how it can, and more importantly, what can you do with that? So our first speaker today is Jolene Jane. Jolene has been an activist. She is one of the greatest Asian performers here in Seattle, and she's also a member of the National Speakers Association. Let's welcome to the stage, Jolene Jane.
Hey, Jolene, my stage walk. Hello, and I am Japanese, Chinese, and Swedish, also in Seattle. We are, John and I here are, woo! Well, thank you all for being here. This is such an important topic. And before we start, I want to ask you something. Think about, has there been a time when you have felt unsafe? Maybe you're a planner and you were setting up a conference in another city and you took a wrong turn and then another wrong turn, and you are in this other community that you do not belong in. People are looking at you, they know you're an outsider and you are feeling it. Have you felt unsafe before? Likely you felt unsafe, but not that often. Well, unfortunately, Asians are feeling unsafe, and more often than not, going to work, on a walk, and even going to the store. This likely is a surprise for you, but when you do hear Asians speak about this, do take a listen, because what you don't know about Stop Asian Hate will cost you. That's what we're talking about today. My main points are Asians represent a tremendous market with accelerating buying power, and Asians don't feel safe. And anti-Asian hate is impacting your business, and you can address both Stop Asian Hate while benefiting financially for your company with this Asian American market. But I think it's first important to see, why do Asians not feel safe? This is your trigger warning. I'm going to show you 45 seconds of unpleasant graphic images. If you need to duck out for a moment, go ahead, and I'm going to show it right now.
Not gonna let you hold us down. We're gonna rise up and stand our ground, and we won't keep quiet no more. You lured us overseas, fed us lies so we'd believe that we could have everything you have. And we built your railroad tracks while you walked upon our backs.
And this last one happened 7 days ago, and it made the news today because Asian allies made it happen. This is a Cambodian nun who's 67 years old, and she was beat up by several people. And there also was an 80-year-old, and they both went to the hospital. Asians are attacked every day, every day. And the stat here, 9,081 in 2020 last year, for 15 months, that stat is 9,081 anti-Asian hate incidents. That is a big number, and it only is a tiny sliver, a fraction of reality. Because in Asian cultures, it's really keep your head down, just get over it and move forward. We're not trying to draw attentions to ourselves. So that is a big number. Now, a lot of people don't talk about Asian hate, and they don't believe it either. So what I'm doing is I'm actually tracking this. On my website, jolenejang.com, there's a timeline of attacks that show the daily attacks so people can see it for themselves. I wish that more people cared about Asians, but until they do, we have some compelling reasons for you to care about Asians. So on this next slide here, this is a population, US population. And on this pie chart, we see that 60% of the population is white and controls $13.2 trillion in buying power. The little red slice there is a population of Asian Americans, which is 6%. And they have $1.2 trillion. So it is a disproportionately high number, and it is growing at the fastest rate. Another thing you want to pay attention to is that Asian Americans also have the highest income and also the highest level of education and the fastest growing population. There are a number of major companies that are tuning into this who want to cash in on this. For example, Netflix. They have a category of Asian Pacific Islanders, so you can find different shows that have Asian actors and Asian stories. I don't know if there's a few Asian stories. And there are also shows, mainstream stories that are really funny. Never Have I Ever. And there's a Southeast Asian lead who's hilarious. And there are also East Asian male leads who are the cool guys. So they are profiting from it, but it's also great for a lot of people to see it. Shang-Chi, of course, you have heard of. And this is the top grossing movie of this year. And this has an all Asian cast. And they're making a lot of money, but also think about all the merchandising, all of the bobbleheads and the Happy Meals and the lunch pails and the pajamas and the Halloween costumes. And pretty soon they're going to be party favors. And you in the event industry might also start doing Shang-Chi themes. So there's a lot of opportunity to hear. And let's talk about hotels for a moment. John, go ahead and bring up the poll. What percentage of hotels and motels are US owned by Asian Americans? Is it 10%, 20%, 35, 50, 60? So do you work with hotels? Do your vendors work with hotels? Do your clients stay at hotels? There's a connection in here. And can you see the opportunity here? So let's see what we have here. What are the results, John?
Here they come.
Okay. Yeah, nope, everybody's wrong. Sorry. So the results, 60%, no, 30%. Okay, great. Several of you. So the answer is 60%. So what does that mean to you in the event industry? What if you knew more about Asian cultures and can work and sell and work with Asians, these Asian hotel owners? Go ahead and remove that poll. Okay. And just for funsies, in the chat, what do you think, how many are owned by, in Texas? What percentage of hotels and motels are owned by Asian Americans in Texas? And be thinking, if you start learning about Asian hotels and could get in as a preferred vendor, that's going to bring you a ton of business. Yes, APIs in Texas, 80%. Mind-blowing? Mind-blowing.
Lenore knew that. How did Lenore know that? I'll find out in the chat.
She's an Asian ally. All right. So let's talk about hotels for a moment. So of course, hotels have been hit really hard with COVID challenges, and their housekeepers, because due to cleaning schedule changes, et cetera, housekeepers have to work really hard in less safer environments, and they're already stressed out. And if you look at the 8.8% that are Asian housekeepers, they have this other layer. They have to be concerned about being safe and like, hey, we don't want that Chinese, in our room, and they don't want to be attacked and yelled at. So if you want to retain your Asian employees, you need to make it safe for them. And food and beverages, of course, if it's, how hard that is to get staffing there. In Seattle, there are signing bonuses of $2,000 for dishwashers and making $40 an hour. So if you have Asian employees and want to keep them or want to recruit them, you have to keep them safe. There are numerous examples of Asian wait staff being harassed and attacked. And it was last week where there was an Asian woman and she asked for the proof of vaccination as she's supposed to, and she was attacked by 3 people. So take care of your employees. Otherwise, you're going to be really short-staffed. Another opportunity, there's an opportunity here. Name an industry that has a bunch of money, lots of events, and Asian employees. Yeah, okay. Yeah, guessed it, technology. And if you think about Silicon Valley, a lot, the Facebooks and Googles, a lot of them are half Asian. There are articles about this. And where are they going to spend their money? If they're half Asian, they likely want to go somewhere and do conferences where they feel respected and they feel safe. And also think about this. In 2019, there were 12 million visitors from Asia. And when they start coming back to the United States, where are they going to want to stay? Which hotels? They want to be comfortable and safe. So they're going to stay a place that they feel comfortable with. Is it going to be Asian owned or a company also that recognizes what they need to get that? Many opportunities here. So what you don't know about Stop Asian Hate is going to cost you. And so I am going to inform you more about that. And also start with your company. Do you have Asian employees? What do you know about them? Which of the 49 countries are they from? How do they identify? Do you sell to Asian Americans? What do you know about the culture? So if you want to retain your employees and attract clients, it's good to have Asians as employees as well. So many things to think about. I'm going to share with you some of the Stop Asian basics, because as you think about your employees, your customers, your neighbors, they are impacted. So let me start with the myth that, oh, it's just seniors in Chinatown. Well, no, that's not true. Yes, seniors are definitely impacted, but it is actually all Asians. And unfortunately, men too, and also children. There's 2-year-olds and 6-year-olds that are targets as well. And what was surprising to me that this is a martial artist, Asian martial artist for America, and she was a target too, as well as the baseball players and Olympiads. All Asians are targets. So as you think about your employees and your customers and know that all Asians are targets, let's go through daily activities like walking and eating and going to work and home, because your employees are impacted by this. So for example, walking. This lady, she is 89 years old. And while she was walking, she was set on fire. Here's a sign. This is a construction sign. It says, "Start Asian Hate." License plate that says Asian flu, blaming Asians. And this is in Seattle, Chinatown. These are white supremacist signs. This is a Japanese American, and she came after the coffee shop. She came back to her car to find a cup of urine saying, "Die and kill." How would you feel if you had these words on your property? I would be concerned. And again, daily activities, going to CVS, going to fast food, going to FedEx, all these receipts have the racial slur of Ching Chong. Again, not made to feel welcome. And at home, this is a place we are supposed to feel like this is our safe haven. However, this Korean American had just lost her husband, and this letter celebrates that he's gone. Now he's gone, one less Asian we have to put up with. And again, outside the home, this Cambodian gentleman parked outside his house, as he always does, and his neighbor, who's Asian, also did, and their cars were destroyed. This is constant and in many different ways. So you can see that all Asians are targets, and hate is overt and could also be subtle, could be microaggressions, it could be gaslighting, and just visually in all these daily activities. And it's stressful. And I also experienced this stress around this. When I went bike riding with my friend a couple months ago in the sunshine, we both saw this black garbage bag. And so the difference is he didn't think anything of it. But what I saw is I saw this Asian man who was murdered and cut up into pieces, dismembered by hacksaw and put in a plastic bag. That's what I saw by these 3 young white men. So every time I see a black garbage bag, that's what I see. And this is just one incident. And there are daily violent incidents all the time. There are a number of Asians who are devastated by this. Me too. And I no longer walk alone. I always have a walking partner. And there are Asians who also have PTSD because of this and are experiencing this on a daily basis. It is more pervasive than you realize. And it does impact Asians. It does impact the daily decisions of Asians. And I just want to show you this. You probably didn't hear about the hacksaw situation, that death, but have you heard of Gabby Petito? I'm pretty sure everybody heard of this white woman who was missing and then and she was dead. But you probably haven't heard of all these Asians who were killed because the news doesn't report on it. And that is the truth and the sad, and we need to speak up so that is not the case. I do have a victory story for maybe the after session. But the daily decisions that Asians have to make is, changing their walking patterns, maybe taking another route. What other transportation? Do I really want to take the subway and risk being a person thrown on the tracks and buses? I don't want to be pushed on the stairs and thrown out. If I had a child, I wouldn't want to have my Asian child be out there and be a target to a car. And Asians, we also have to be careful not to cough. So if you want to retain your Asian employees and attract Asian employees and get more Asian customers, you really have to listen to who you have here. You got to listen and validate and create employee resource groups. There is a great resource for that. What I have done is I saw the need for Asians to have a safe space to congregate and talk to each other. And so this is what I created here. And you could do this with your ERG. And you could also host listening sessions at your company. Not all Asians want to speak up and be vocal, but they might do a survey. And have you created a statement backed up by policies? What is your DEI program? Does your DEI program include Asian cultures? Because I think a lot of the times it doesn't. And we need to, because 49 countries, that's kind of a lot, and cultures and different. You have people like John and I who are like mixed in different generations. It gets complicated. So if we can learn a little bit more, then we could be more accommodating, and also we could sell more stuff to more people. So DEI, now DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, is becoming more popular. And there are some companies who are taking it very seriously. And for example, if a meeting planner, one of these wants to do city selection, well, they may look at their audience and their client. Okay, who is the audience? For example, are they Asian? Are they Black? Are they Jewish? And may look into the city. Will they feel comfortable there? And what are the laws that are going on right now? What are the current events right now? Like, there's no way I would want to go to Texas or Florida or Arizona. There's places that are not Asian friendly to me right now. And so being able to consider that. And these planners are also going to ask you, do your vendors, from the hotel staff, meeting planning staff to the restaurants, do they reflect the population? So as meeting planners incorporate DEI more seriously, will you be able to meet those standards? So if not, I do have resources and I can help with that as well. There is massive opportunity with that Asian American market. And on my website, jolenejang.com, you can get schooled on, there's modules here that talk about what is Stop Asian Hate and learn about lack of representation and how that affects us. And I can also set these different modules in your company pertaining to you. I've created this Asian Allies group, and we meet weekly, and it's an online group. So we talk about what we can do. And just this morning, so it was the nun that was getting beat up, also with a hammer, mind you, as well. So I saw it on Instagram with Asians with Attitudes, and I'm like, why doesn't our local news here in Seattle get it? And so we talked about it at Asian Allies. I shared it a few times, And then several other people, this is one of our challenges. And so Lenore got King 5 to report on it. So at least more people know about it. And then there were 2 other stories just today. So we can make a difference. Asian Allies will show you, like, it's a safe place for people to speak up. And you know, hate doesn't just go away. People are like, just don't watch the news. Don't worry about it. Or they may say, you know what, I'm not the one hating, so I can't do anything. Well, that's not true either. We need to speak up if we want to change things. You can do it, and you can also be financially rewarded for it. So don't wait. Stop the hate. John, back to you.
All right, everyone, chat thank you to Jolene Jang. Thank you, Jolene. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Jolene. You know, in this next section, again, we've been divided into 3 sections today. Number 1 is just saying there is Asian hate, and some people that we've actually met said it didn't exist. And so Jolene has really been an active in this area and showed some hopefully concrete proof for you. What we're going to do now is spend a little time in what's happening now. So in what's happening now, we want to just share some of these items. And one of the first things I want to just share with you is, how did we get to 1 point, or how did we say it was going to affect you trillions? Well, in our discussions, in our multi-week discussion leading up to this program, we really wanted to know that while those visuals are disturbing and you think you should do something, we also know the other way to get things done here in America is around the dollar. So we said, we got to figure out where this hits the meeting industry and the pocketbook. So we looked at, this is actually from 2019. This is the average spend per Asian in the United States. And look, 5 of the top 7 categories are in the meetings industry: housing, transportation. Jolene, can you spotlight me, please? Thank you so much. And so, so again, the 5 of the 7 pieces are around the meetings piece. Here, thank you so much, Jolene. Excellent. So again, housing, transportation, food, entertainment, and education. Now, the other facts that we have is, where did we get trillions? Well, the Asian American consumer market is now, and this is, again, this was published this year, 1.2 trillion, right? Think about that. 1.2 trillion. So the buying power of Asian Americans in America really has a substantial impact, and a good portion of this 1.2 trillion is in the meetings industry. So I think the next piece to really look at here is, again, that these 9,000 that Jolene talked about, let's break it down and find out, how does this relate to the meetings industry? Well, number 1 is verbal harassment. In the StopAAPIHate.org national report, and if you haven't seen it, I suggest you read it. It says that verbal harassment is the biggest way. And if you did not see this incident, this was in San Francisco. This guy is a CEO. Of all things, he was a CEO and went on a barrage on an Asian family. And this was actually a restaurant that's about an hour from San Francisco. And what I also, if you watch this video, you'll see actually an ally, a white woman who comes in, steps in between this gentleman and the Asian family and said, "Sir, you need to leave now." I called that restaurant. I called that restaurant and I said, "I want to compliment your staff for acting so quickly in the defense of this Asian family." And they said, "Thank you so much for the support." The other parts here, 32% public streets, right? And if you look at this here, a lot of these public streets are on the way to meeting locations, hotels, convention centers, so forth and so on. So this is why this becomes a problem, because of course the next biggest place that can happen is businesses. And so, like in this case, this was an incident where we saw a woman was being attacked outside of these doors in New York. But why is this important? This gentleman over here is a doorman for like a hotel, and he did not step in and intervene. He came to this door and he closed it, and he did nothing. And that's the impact it can have. If this was a hotel I was even a guest in, let alone being the top meeting planner for, I would remove my business, I would ask for a refund, and I would never go there again. So with that, I'm going to be joined here by my good friend. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at Bizly.com and a great activist. I reached out to him based upon a podcast he did, and he said yes. So please put your hands together or chat for our good friend, Kevin Iwamoto. Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for being here. I know you have a busy schedule too. What I want to do with this is some of the challenges about what's happening now is happening because of issues like this, like the model minority myth. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience in the meeting? Again, you're an executive too in the meetings industry, just so we're clear about that. How does the model minority myth affected you over the past years?
For me, it really had, I would say, marginal impact. For the majority, I think it has major impact. And the reason why I say that is, like you, John, I'm a third generation Japanese American or Hawaiian American, and I was born and raised in Hawaii. It's a melting pot of cultures. My lens of the world started in Hawaii. It was only when I moved to California for professional reasons that I really discovered that, Asians are not just a minority, but we're also like stereotyped in these different categories, one of which is this model minority myth. And the reason why we're there is because, unlike other minorities, we don't do a lot of picketing, we don't do a lot of boycotting, we don't do a lot of verbose activities. Yeah. And we are certainly not as organized as a minority group because multiculturally, who comprises the Asian group is various different Asian cultures and countries that don't necessarily talk to one another all the time. And so we're further segregated by that. But the one thing that we do have in common is that most Asian cultures teach their children not to make waves, not to be vocal, work harder, be successful. And so culturally, no matter if you're third generation or not, you are brought up with these inherent traits, if you will, or behavioral guidelines that really make us, more like a silent minority more than but because we don't protest, we're viewed as a model minority.
Yeah, Kevin, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to this lack of organization, especially here in the meetings industry.
Yes.
There are definitely a lot of interest groups that have organized, right? So thank you to our Black allies who are here. Again, they're really strong. LGBTQ has a number of organizations inside of the meetings industry. Just this whole fact here, when we started this program, like in the midway part of this program, we're like, what event groups are there for Asians? And we didn't find anything. In the history of Facebook, nobody has thought to create API event profs.
Yeah.
I'm happy to report to you that we created as part of this program, and you can actually go to this group and join it now, right? That's one of the places we think we can start to coalesce, and there's many other locations like that. So, and then I want to out myself, Kevin. I want to share part of the challenge is us. Like, I'm not saying everyone else has to change. Hopefully that's different than what you hear in a lot of other messages. We got to do something ourselves.
That's right.
And I'll tell you, I'll be honest, right? So Nancy, I see you here in our room with us. I'm going to admit to you, the deadline for this program was 2 months ago, and we missed it. And it because we were busy.
Yeah.
Well, we're all busy, right? And that's not the excuse. And so when I missed the deadline, thank you to Tyler, by the way. Tyler Davidson from Meetings Today magazine. He's the one, he had a conversation with Amanda Ma, who is also in the industry, and he says, we need to do something. And Tyler said, I'll help support you. That's an ally, by the way. I'll help support you. But John, you got to do the work. And I'm like, yeah, of course, that's fine. And then we missed the deadline. And after I missed that deadline, that's the exact problem we're having, Kevin. And I said, I recommitted to this program, and we put this together here today. And let me tell you, for this 1 hour, all the speakers that are here and many other people who are not here spend at least 10 or more hours in discussions about what to present here. Kevin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And we are really behind the 8 ball. When you look at other ethnic groups, they have lobbyists in Washington, D.C. They've coalesced that way. We don't. And so we have a lot of work we need to do, including education of, the Asian American contribution to American society. It's not taught commonly in school, and part of that, a big part of that is because there's a lot of ugly history of anti-Asian sentiments throughout the building of America. And,
Yes.
instead of trying to educate, not just the Asian community, but outside the Asian community, we just don't do that. And so we there's a lot that we need to do to kind of coalesce as a minority, so we can break out of this quote unquote silent minority categorization that we currently sit in. It is not acceptable. And some of us will have to go out of our comfort zones and become a lot more vocal and become a lot more activists, because you can't just sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. You have to get involved, and you have to call awareness to it. And a lot of it starts with even the most minute things, like if I jump in an Uber or I jump in a Lyft and the driver, says, "Do you understand English?" The first reaction is, "Oh my God, really?"
Yeah, right.
So, instead of just saying yes and that's it, what I do now is I take those opportunities to say, "Well, yes, I do. I'm a third generation Japanese American. I was born and raised in Hawaii." And I take them through some cultural education so that the next time an Asian person jumps in, they don't ask, "Do you speak English?" You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's just little things like that that we have to kind of, suck it up and kind of do our part to try to educate others, especially people that are non-Asian, about who we are and what we represent. So,
Kevin, let me help you out with that too. I was born and raised in Stockton, California, and when people ask me that, I tell them, not only do I speak English, I speak perfect Californese. Kevin, do you know what perfect Californese sounds like?
I have an idea.
Dude, 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 right? Okay, so, and then they're like, "Oh, geez, yeah." So like that. So that actually, let's go through a couple things. We want to show you what we found and what we didn't find. Number one, I don't know if you've ever heard about this, right? But this is the Asian American Hotels Owners Association, 19,500 members. And by the way, back here to Jolene's stats, 1 in every 2 hotels in the United States is owned by people in this association. Have I seen them at MPI? Have I seen them at WEC? I'm not sure. I personally have not met them in my 20 years in the events industry, but I want to meet these people because look how many resources they have. So here's what we didn't find though. So while we go on that, we search for API executives in meetings and hospitality. By the way, the third resource answer there is new Asian Pacific Islander. That's our meeting. That's this meeting. This meeting we posted 3 weeks ago hit the #1 list for this search term.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing, right?
Which shows you the lack of representation that we have, and when I look at, what Jolene mentioned, and what you mentioned, when you have a lot of Asians, whether they be Asian American or Asians from Asia, involved in the hospitality industry. Okay, one would equate that to an equal number or a similar percentage of numbers of Asian Americans participating at a board level or in an executive level. When you look at that number, it is dismally barren. And, this is not something to be proud of. I'm one of a very, very, very few Asian Americans or Asians represented at a C level in a company. And my very good friend David Kong from Best Western being one of the biggest global chains in the world, is the only Asian person at that level as CEO of a major hotel chain, when the majority of a lot of their employees are Asians. And so it's just, there's kind of like this glass ceiling barrier. Yes. Where Asians and Asian Americans maybe get to like a director level, mid-management level, possibly a vice president level. But the chasm between that being vice president and being in the C level or being represented on a board is really appalling, because there's just a lack of representation overall.
And Kevin, again, I tried to say, I was at Microsoft and I ascended quickly inside of Microsoft and I hit my own ceiling there. And I had to, what I love to call cheat. I started my own company. Then I immediately hit the C level because it was way easier than trying to navigate the system inside of that. Now that's not right. Yeah. I'm saying, but that's how I did it. And that's where a lot of other people. So look at this data here, right? This is 2012 representation, APIs. It's only 16 additional companies. Basically, 77% of the companies had no API representation on their board in 2012. Now, look at this number. This is 2021. 4.1 Hispanic, 4.6 API, 8.7% Black, 82.5%.
Yes.
And this gets to the point, where people say there is no white privilege. Well, what about that graph, right?
Well, and I've actually.
Oh, and yes, he has fight the powers. Somebody is interfering with Kevin Iwamato's internet. We'll bring him right back. And so just to show you some other pieces here too, the share of workforce by race or ethnicity. If you take a look at this, right, there's a disproportionate number of people. That's the blue line is the percentage of people who are professionals. But now a disproportionate, more than the percentage from professional become executives. Now look down here. In the Asian category, while there might be like 10% Asian or so in this professional, only 5% of them get into an executive. So that's the other key part that's here. And Buck G, who is a great person who I've gotten a chance to meet, who's in San Francisco, he said the problem is not representation across all roles. The problem is equity of promotion. So what else did we hunt for? No data on ethnicity of Asians in meetings and hospitality boards or C-suite. We also asked MPI and many other organizations. They have no data on how many API speakers are here. So now look at, I just want to talk to you about how rare Kevin is now too, especially since he's not here, and myself. This here is the rarest creature on the planet. He was sighted in Laos. It is a saola. A saola. It's dubbed the Asian unicorn despite being double-horned. It wasn't photographed since 1999. Both Kevin and I are API executives in the meetings industries. We are unicorns. So with that, I want to bring to the stage our one and only next guest, a professional in the meeting industry too, and my good friend. Let's bring up Nash Fung.
Oh yeah, I am here, my friends. Okay. Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? Y'all doing good?
There you go, Nash.
Yes. All right, good. So yeah, it's been a rough year last year for the API community because of the whole coronavirus thing. But I got a chance to actually bring you a victory story. You see, last year Amazon Music did something amazing that amplify the API community. I want to play a video right now to show you what they have done. Check it out, y'all.
I think it's more so to try to like knock down those barriers and finding ways to show why this is important, not just for this particular month, but as like a year-round program, and how these communities can be amplified, right? I mean, I think this year, obviously with the current climate, there was a call to action for API representation and just kind of understanding what the community is going through. So, you know, with all the adversity happening within the last year, I thought it was really special that Amazon Music did something where we amplified our APAM programming to a new level. Hopefully this is something that's going to be more normalized and recurring now. So we did everything from a slate of Amazon originals, which is original songs that were for our DSP, for our streaming service. We did, you know, a short film series amplifying Asian American women. That was produced by an amazing producer, Jane Shin. She's also on our team. Love Jane to death, and honestly, I think she's so much a part of this as much as I am. We also rolled out playlist series that amplified both APA artists, both overseas to also here in the United States. So Mixtape Asia, the Collective, Made in Hawaii. Those are all new playlists that we were working on that were exclusive to Amazon Music. So yeah, I mean, there's a wide slate of things. We did a virtual event with the Identity Festival, which was a big deal. This festival normally is a 10,000 plus person thing in LA. So it's usually like a big festival, happens in LA every year. Everyone from like Janae Aiko has headlined it to Mike Shinoda. So we went and did this on our Twitch channel, and we did some fundraising. So last year we raised over $100,000 for the United Way Southeast Asia for COVID relief, you know, helping out with API community. And this year we did a $20,000 scholarship for the Pacific Bridge Arts Foundation, and this gives scholarships to Asian American students in the arts.
So what did you notice? What was your takeaway, like some of the key points on how to be an ally?
The best way to be an ally is honestly working with our community and having authentic conversations, and you know, coming from a place of actual, I hate saying the word authentic again, but actual care, you know. And I feel like that's, you know, your actions speak louder than the words. And I honestly feel, you know, I think there's a lot that happened in the last 2 years that's been super special to see different communities coming together that I never saw come together for the Asian community ever. So I think a lot is happening in the right place.
If we want to amplify, you know, API community, what can we do? What can we learn from you, right?
I mean, from what I learned, I mean, it's what they always say. It's like you build it and they will come, right? And if you like come up with a plan and speak up, I think that's another part. What's very like Asians and Asian Americans were kind of like conditioned early to be very passive, you know, in our conversations, especially working with Americans, right? It's always very much like, don't get too crazy, don't get too loud, don't bring up the biggest idea. I think what you just have to learn, what I had to learn too, just kind of like be okay with like creating this plan, build allies within the group, build trust within your community, build trust within non-Asian allies. So then they can understand that, you know, this is coming from a place of like, we want to all grow together. And, you know, it sounds cheesy, but this is how we're all going to unify and actually progress going forward, right?
And if you do want to see the whole video though, it's awesome because we went into a lot more details about what Amazon Music did. And what they did was they did a whole month of API music playlists, because you know how underrepresented, you know, Asian artists are, right? And in the interview, I asked Frankie, like what did he learn from that experience? How we as a community can also amplify the API excellence, and also people want to be an ally, right? What he noticed about how Amazon was such a great ally, what you can do, what you can emulate, that can help us as well. And if we run short on time, that's okay. We can put the link or the snippet video in a chat later, and I can just go right into it because I know we got a limited time over here. John, what do you think? Should we just put a link in the video?
Yeah.
In chat? Yeah, cool. Because I'm actually gonna lead into the next thing that we're doing. Now, like I said, I'm so lucky because I got to do the fun part in this very important presentation right here, right? This is the fun part. I want to recognize a couple of y'all over here. First of all, I hope I say your name correctly. It is Derice. Is that right? Yeah, Derice? Okay, that's Derice. And we have Eliza in here. Okay, and let's see, we have James. And we got Jenny, we got Jerome, and we got Julie, Kaya, Lila, Lenora, we got Nancy, Nicole, Noel, Tyler, and Wendy. You guys are all amazing. Thank you for spending this hour with us, because we know you could easily be doing other things, right? And the thing is, you might have heard by now, a lot of us, we feel kind of all alone when we're in this fight right here, right? So we really appreciate that all y'all came together for this 1 hour and really stand with us and try to hear what's going on in the API community. Because with you guys, if you stand with us, hopefully today you all learn something and you're able to use that knowledge to bring real change to the API community. And with that said though, thank you so much for being here. We're gonna transition to the how. How can you be an ally and help the API community? I'll pass it back to John right now, right?
Excellent. Let's give it up for Nash Fung. We got some virtual applause with that. All right, in our last section here today is like, what can you do? It's, you know, if you are here, we already know that you want to take action. And we want you to take action. We want to show you some very easy ways to do that. I'm excited to bring my good friend from Toronto, Trevor Louie, who is also an author, and one of my best friends who is an ally, Joan Eisenstadt from Washington, D.C. Let's bring them up. Excellent. Trevor and Joan, are you ready to go?
Yes, we are. Thank you, John.
Well, Tracy, the billboard in question would have gone through numerous sets of eyes before being approved, but after its message was brought to the attention of RE/MAX, less than 24 hours later, it's been taken down. This billboard caught the eye of Trevor Louie, but not for the intended purpose.
Use of cultural appropriation or tone deafness or ignorance as a form of marketing there really isn't any place for it.
Real estate agents Dylan Fieldhouse and Michael Majeski are plastered on the billboard, promoting themselves as COVID real estate ninjas at your service. Outfront, which owns the ad space, confirms it has now been taken down.
I did not actually even think of whether or not this billboard was racist. It was a matter of being tone deaf and completely misunderstanding and lacking of empathy.
Louis noticed the billboard this morning on Royal York south of Evans in between two middle schools. People's opinions were divided on Twitter when he posted the photo, many not understanding why he found the billboard offensive. And that, he says, is part of the problem.
This is, to me, a perfect definition for the word systemic, right? So if you think about it's up there, it's accepted through all the levels that it got to the point where it was put up on a billboard, and it's accepted that people can walk by it and feel that it's okay.
Fieldhouse and Majeski weren't available for comment, but RE/MAX responded with a statement saying it wasn't aware of the billboard and will be contacting the agent's franchise owner, as the messaging in the advertisement directly conflicts with our values and belief in equality, inclusiveness, and access to homeownership for all.
I'm looking for the foundation, the DNA of companies to think about building their business through diversity and inclusion, as opposed to reacting to when things are done like this. Because if there was a policy that was that strong, why would it have gone through and been up there?
But Louis says this isn't about indicting the business. Rather, it's about learning from mistakes and correcting them. Tracy, we'll send it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, John. What we have rolling behind us is actually hundreds of responses that we received on Twitter, myself and some members of the Asian community who are in the press. What I want to talk about really is both Jolene and John talked about different forms of abuse. And the one thing we didn't talk about is digital abuse. And I myself was a recipient of about a month's worth of digital abuse, both on direct message on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. And we have some examples here of the level of ignorance. And so we talk about allyship, and we're going to bring Joan in for a conversation really quick. We want to talk about why something like this seemed to so many people that there was nothing wrong with it. And we're gonna spare you with a lot of the details of a lot of the posts that went up there, but I can tell you that this went on for a long time. And maybe for every 10 negative comments, we'd have one or two supporters. And so I'm going to bring Joan in right now. We're going to have a really candid discussion about allyship and how we can move forward. I do want to say one really quick thing. I'm up here in Canada, and today is September 30th, and it's Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is Canada's day of recognizing our Indigenous communities. And I want to really put a shout out to our Indigenous communities for all the work that they've done in lending a voice in many different ways and allowing us an opportunity to have a voice today as well. So I just want to really recognize our Indigenous communities. I want to welcome Joan, who's been a tremendous ally for many years and on this entire process. Hi, Joan.
Trevor, hi. And John, thank you. Tyler, thank you. Jolene, Nash, Kevin. This has been an extraordinary experience for me as an ally. And here's what I want to start with, Trevor, before we have a conversation. On March 4th of 2020, so if you all remember where we were in 2020 as COVID began, and we know what it was being called, we know the slurs being used that were harming people in the API community, and specifically people who were Chinese. And we know that. And so there was a program on PBS NewsHour, and John, if you'll run a very small portion of that, please.
For millions from around the world, this Chinatown, 24 blocks housing the largest and oldest Chinese community in North America, is a must-see destination. That steady stream of tourists is the lifeblood of Kevin Chan's business.
If the tourists don't come in, this place is dead. Since January, the new year, nobody show up.
No more school field trips.
No more school field trips because the teacher don't want to take the responsibilities. People said the virus is from China. When you come to Chinatown, you get infected because Chinese people has it.
If you're from China, I need to know.
Like this hotel manager in Indiana.
Because why? Because there's a coronavirus going around, and anyone from China, I am told, has to be picked up and quarantined for 2 weeks.
And an incident last week in London left a student from Singapore with fractures and bruises in what police are calling a racially aggravated assault.
I want to tell the people is fight the virus, not the people, okay?
John, thanks for running that. So I saw this, and I know some of the people who were interviewed in it from San Francisco, and I And no matter how many times I see it or we talk about it, and we have all of these issues through our planning of this program, I get very emotional. And the reason I get emotional is both the realization of the incredible hate and the harm done to people. It's also that as someone in the hospitality industry, our industry did not speak up. And after that aired, in fact, probably while it was airing, I tweeted and I tagged industry associations and I said, where are our voices? When are we going to counter this slur about a virus and this harming people? And I got nothing in response. It wasn't until a year later, because I double checked it, to see that our industry did not put out statements for a full year about anti-Asian hate. And so as someone in the hospitality industry, and to watch what happened here in Washington, D.C., where I live, and what happened to businesses in our Chinatown, and what happened around this country, what happened in Canada, what happened around the world, I was horrified, I'm angry, I continue to be. And so as we talk, Trevor, one of the interesting things that first of all, I think you're interesting. You have done so many different things in your life and are in and outside our industry. One of the areas you've been most involved in is food. And I want to tell you something and ask you a question. It occurred to me as we were getting ready to do this, that I wondered what the popularity of foods were in the United States, what ethnic foods were the most popular. So I did some research. And what I found, and this is what it's quoted in the article, it says that it says many Americans learn about and enjoy different cultures through food. We know that. We see it in our meetings when we're in a certain city or a city where we highlight food. And so it talks specifically about Chinese food. Thai, Korean, Vietnamese, and Japanese restaurants are gaining fans, okay? So what I wondered was, you've talked about the experience of food in our industry and how it, in a sense, misrepresents what the experience is and the people that it represents. How do we make the change for people to learn culture through food, which is a big part of what we do?
Joan, thanks for those statistics. I did some work this year on a topic called food racism. You know, I've been in the meeting and event industry for over 25 years myself, and I transitioned over to the restaurant and live event side. And I can't tell you that when I was in catering, how many times when we were creating menus for customers and we would present something that was Asian, it was not mainstream enough for customers. Yet the fastest growing SKUs in food service these days are, like you said, Japanese, Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese. I mean, everyone has Chinese once a week. But part of it is language, right? And we go back to the language of the microaggressions and the things we talk about when it comes to Asian food, about it being dirty, being cheap, the whole discussion around MSG. You know, that's another thing that was fabricated in the 60s by a doctor out of Boston and still sticks with us today. So we have MSG, Chinese food syndrome still. And then if you carry that on to everything else, like the things like, oh, don't the Chinese people eat cat and dogs, and it must be filthy in the kitchen, and do you know Kung Fu, and all these things that we think that are normalized in society through systemic racism through the years have been normalized as accepted. And that shows in that billboard, right? That we can use the basis of COVID and Asian font and Asian culture to sell real estate, which has no place at all, right? And so, you know, the food part is one big part that's completely separate, but it's a very huge component of our live event industry, right? And I can tell you, you know, we didn't have our official outbreak and first lockdown until March 16th of this year, but Chinatown had already seen up to 50% reduction in revenues in restaurants as early as December of 2019.
I think that what's interesting is that, again, when I look at what our industry does, that there were opportunities to talk about that. There was a lot of talk about businesses that shut down. It did not focus on the API businesses that were shut down because of exactly what we heard from the business owners in that clip. And there's much more for people if they want to watch it. You had, through your experience, something through the experience with the billboards, an experience very similar to something I had, and I had forgotten about it. So let me quickly tell you mine, and then I want you to talk about changing minds. When I was 12 years old, a long time ago, it was during the early part of the civil rights movement in the US. And I was puzzled by why white students, and specifically the South, but really all over the US, did not want to go to school, were adamantly against going to school with Black students. And yet they would buy records, they'd go to concerts of Black artists. And so I, at 12, wrote a letter to a teen magazine, and I said, why? I don't understand it. Explain it to me. Talk to me. It was a time when life was different and you could put your address in, and I got hundreds of letters. I wish I'd saved them, I didn't. But I had ongoing conversations with people that were not unlike what you had with someone that had started hatefully toward you. Would you talk about that?
Yeah, I think through all this, Joan, is, and I'll take one step backwards. I mean, some of us look at today and say, God, I wish we had 300 participants, but we had 37, and that's a good start. And I look at who's participating, and there are faces that are not necessarily Asian. So I know that we have allies out there, and we have to start somewhere. With the billboard, even though I received hundreds of really negative and hateful messages online, I received one particular email that someone sought me out to find my website, find my email, and directly email me. And he was an older, mid-60 white gentleman from the Toronto area who emailed me about the fact that he just didn't understand and he wanted to have a conversation. And I took that as an opportunity. So we exchanged phone numbers, and I actually called him. And this was in the heart of COVID. This was, I believe it was in July. We actually ended up having a 90-minute conversation on the phone, and we understood a lot more about each other. And we committed that when this pandemic was over, that we would sit down and share a coffee. And that to me was a win. And really, from our community, one win is more than not having any wins at all. And I think this is where we have to start. I look at allies like Tyler and yourself and Zoe and all those that are on this call. This is the start of something new, because like John and Kevin said, as model minorities, we have all been raised in a culture where we have always been afraid to speak up. And you asked me this, while we were preparing for this, when did I realize that maybe my parents and my grandparents went through this? And I didn't realize this as a kid. I realize it now. I didn't recognize it, but I recognize it now because I've gone through it myself. So these conversations are so imperative for us to continue having, and they're difficult discussions. No one said they're going to be easy, right? And we don't have to agree on everything, but to have a discussion takes us in a much different direction.
I think learning about each other, we've had this incredible privilege, those of us working on this, to really have some, I think, deeper conversations. And you and I in particular have had that, and I cherish them. What's interesting to me is that I think being an ally, for many people is difficult. People don't like speaking up. They don't like challenging what is. They don't want to be the one. I've been called a lot of interesting names in my life because I am an ally in a lot of situations. John, would you put up the quotes that Zomore was wonderful to share? I asked Zomore, who's very involved in our industry with and outside the industry with allyship and helping people understand. And I asked her, I have my own words for allies. I wanted her words because she was so involved with us as an ally and working. And so it says the golden rule is not applicable to allyship because it results in the allies centering their support around their own frustrations and lived experiences. We do the second one too, please. And hopefully we can do the second one about the advocacy. And so, and what it says, instead, as allies, we must abide by the platinum rule, treat people as they wish and deserve to be treated. And the only way to do that is to open the conversation and to talk about what we can do and how we work together, whether it's a demonstration, whether it's going back to what Jolene talked about, it's asking when we're selecting venues and destinations about staffing and asking about and watching the statistics on hate and being sure that we speak up if we see advertising that isn't inclusive of all kinds of people, that we can do much more. So we, along with what you have said, what John said, Kevin said, Jolene said, Nash, all of us have said, yes, it is difficult to not speak up because your culture says don't. It's also difficult for allies to speak up because they don't want to be ostracized for speaking up for others. Take us out with what we can do to work together.
Thank you for that, Joan. I want to reemphasize something that John said earlier. Both John and I were probably the subjects of working corporate and ended up in entrepreneurship because we were forced to. And I think that is a really good example of what we need to change. I don't want to see John and Kevin as the only unicorns in this industry anymore. I, in a way, walked away from this industry a little bit by myself because I felt isolated in an environment where I didn't see or hear people that were the same as myself. But in ending, you know, our once famous mayor in Toronto once said in city council meeting, man, those Chinese people, they work like dogs. What we need is a different voice from our leadership, and we need a different voice from our allies. And the one thing that we talked about in planning this is this phrase about acknowledgement and recognition. And we have to stop with non-performative action and move to tackling past the fear of reprisal if you want to say something. But rather than just saying something, if you see something, do something. Just saying something will not work anymore. Just putting up a black square, an orange square, a yellow square in your social media will not work anymore. We need to take action. So I want to thank all my fellow panelists and John and all our allies for this. Thank you for your time, for allowing me to be here today.
Excellent, everyone. Let's do some applause for all of our speakers. We're going to give this last part. We're going to open the mics here in just a second. Thank you, Nicole, for the applause. Again, you can chat your thanks. What we would love for in your chats, too, what's the one thing you're taking away from this? It could be a fact you didn't know about, or it could be the inspiration to say, I want to do more. What we want to do, too, is we discovered, we all said the same thing in the early discussions, and it said, we can't solve this problem in a 1-hour virtual meeting. So what all of us have committed to do, each one of us is hosting a 1-hour virtual, or at least a 90-minute virtual meeting, in a series of 3, approximately 1 a month following this day, where I hope that our good friends at Tyler Davidson at Meetings Today will help support us too in those. And if you want to have a deeper conversation, that program will be more about talking to you. Because we know the other way to solve this, 1 is through conversation, and 2, one of my very good friends has done a lot of work, and he wrote a book about 10 people who used to be members of hate groups who actually now are supporting people. And they said, what was the one common factor? And they said, you made a friend in that group. And once you make a friend in that group, you actually understand, and it makes it almost impossible for you to hate somebody in that group. So again, with that, all of us here at Speakers say thank you because you registered. Hopefully you allow us to mail you an invite for those 3 programs coming up. I'm just going to play a little music. Feel free to log out. I know some of you need to go, but if you're going to stay, we're going to open the mics and have a little conversation and the bonus extra hours after this. Thank you again, Lenore. Thank you, Kia, Nancy, so many other people here. I'm going to remove the spotlight. Let's open the mics. And if you click View Gallery here on the top right, again, if you do turn on your camera, we will be able to see you. And now, does anybody have any comments or questions from our audience? Nicole said, this was so necessary. Thank you all so much for your time. Anybody else like to chime in here? Hi, James. How are you? Would you like to comment? Do you have anything that you'd like to say to the panel or ask the panel?
Actually, I think I'm more, I feel like I'm more of a lurker today. I've really enjoyed listening to this. And I just appreciate the time, the vulnerability, and the sharing.
Thank you.
It means a lot.
Tell us a little more. Are you in the meetings industry?
I am not. I work in local government in Shoreline, Washington, and met Jolene, and she sent me this link and thought I might learn something. So I do that. I work in sort of management there at the city, and one of the goals we have as a city, our council explicitly adopted a resolution to be an anti-racist community, and to do what we could within city government to enable that to happen. And since I work for the city manager, it's part of my portfolio to help that along. I'm just learning. I don't know what to do. I'm no specialist in this, right? So just take in information and keep thinking.
Well, I got you. I got you, James. I got you. And by the way, John Chen is also in Shoreline, so we're local. And Nash,
awesome.
Nash is here too.
So as a resident, I live right across from Cromwell Park.
All right.
And so, again, I'm happy to be a resource here, invested in the city of Shoreline. And the nice part is like, this pandemic has been better. I actually put a very big story. I had 2 teenage kids throw a rock at me in Bellevue. And Bellevue is not necessarily known as a place to be, it's kind of like the rich, expensive place around the areas here near Seattle. And that was my experience. And I'm just happy to say that has not happened to me in Shoreline. Otherwise, you'd be hearing about it.
Yeah. Anytime, come find me. We don't want that.
Yeah, we don't want that. Totally agree. Anybody else in the audience? We got a few others. Feel free. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
It's interesting, James. I don't know you, and I don't know Shoreline. I'm in the other Washington, so I don't know the community. And when you said you weren't in hospitality, I think that everybody, in a sense, is in hospitality. We all attend meetings. We put meetings together. Policy is made that impacts meetings. And so for me, what's been, I think, the most painful, and I'm curious for those who stuck around, how do we influence, I've pulled out the ethical conduct statements from industry associations that all include diversity statements. And yet when I asked them, I was the one who asked people, asked organizations what they did around these issues. And I got from some nothing, literally nothing, no response. Others a walk around. How do we pull in and help this issue become more understood? Is it to send the link to this, the final product, to them and say, watch this and tell us what you're going to do? I mean, for me, that's one. How do we make it? I want to force people's hands.
I love that idea. I love that idea of, hey, we noticed that you believe in this. And so we want to, here's a resource. And I know that this is important to you because you say it here and here and here. And, kind of like we're assuming we know you're just performative, but I love that idea.
Excellent. Nicole, I didn't realize we'd be chatting. I was at the gym. Thanks again, Nicole. Well, you said the most important words. This is so necessary. It's so right. And all of us actually as a group, as we coalesce with this, we're trying to decide, what is our own next actions, right? Because we're trying to find what is actually happening in the meetings industry, and do we actually need to create something ourselves? And I don't know if we've fully decided that, but this API event profs is definitely the first start of it. It was something that was easy, and we'll be curious, like how many people in the meetings industry can we curate? And if we do, then we know we're on the right track.
Hey, John, I just wanted to add, I think what Joan and Trevor have started doing, which is, talking to some trade associations and things like that, is I think one of the things we really need to do, because the lack of data and lack of representation of API in executive ranks and elsewhere is really appalling. And a lot of it has to do with tracking the data, establishing a baseline for where we are this year versus maybe measuring it where we are next year. But we're not even, making some of these industry-wide questionnaires, especially when it comes to like identifying demographics. So I think stage one is we need to raise our hand and say, you need to include us in a lot of these studies, surveys, and white papers and things that you're putting out together, because the lack of Asian representation, even though we know it's there, especially in the mid-management level, is really appalling.
Yeah, one of our other members of the committee who helped us plan, Gary Murakami, who is well known in the meetings industry. He's probably sat on every committee, which is why I needed his info. He said there was one company that had like 5,000 employees and it had one Asian executive. Now, if you look, the average, I believe, in America is about 5 to 6%. That's what you could look at. So, if you had 100 people, 6 of them should be should be executives or something, or 6 of them would be Asian, and then you have to figure out how many are executives. So that's like, what would somebody do the math? 1 over 5,000. Here, I'll do it for you. It's ridiculous how small that is, and that's nowhere. That's 0.0002%.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah. And when you look at the diversity chart that you popped up, you would think there'd be higher representation of Asians. We're last on that list, basically,
Well, the data that I got, I'm a member of Executive Development Institute that was developed here in the Seattle area. Specifically, it originated from a Boeing engineer, a Boeing executive, who looked around and did the same thing you and I do, Kevin. Where is everybody? And so he created this institute. It has over 1,000 graduates, but they came up with data, and apologies to the other ethnicities, but the data showed it was true. You have a better shot if you're a woman, Black, or Hispanic at getting an executive job than being an Asian, despite having 200. We have 2 times the national average of degrees, advanced degrees. So bachelor's, master's, PhD. And so, again, that is also not right. So it's like 50% or less.
Yeah.
And that is that fact was 10 years old, and it hasn't seemed to have gotten much better.
It hasn't. It's gotten worse, actually.
And I teach team building. Cross-team collaboration has also gotten worse. So all of these factors are like all coming together, and I think something's got to change, obviously. And the one part that I do like, Kevin, is that like in EDI and other places, every time somebody makes it to the executive position. And we get to celebrate that, because it really is. We should celebrate that because it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
And,
I want to add something to that, and I think the answer is yes, and well, actually not as part of preparation for this, but then it turned into part of this. I'm involved with, in a number of ways, Unite Here, the union for a lot of people who work in our industry, work support positions. And in my conversations with them, the housekeepers in particular are terrified of speaking out. So yes, we need to work on what happens to and how we move people into executive positions.
Yeah.
We aren't doing right now, and this is Jolene back to what you talked about. People are terrified to go to work. They are terrified to work. That man in the clip from PBS upset me so much that he didn't want to even be in a hotel where someone that he thought, because they might be Chinese, that they might then give him COVID. And so we have to look, I think, broadly at this industry. I can't influence the world as much as I'd like to. I can work within this industry. And I don't think we are doing enough to hold the industry accountable to saying nothing. And so I think until we get people who are willing to do that, I may have had honors, but I'm nobody relative to the people in power of this industry. We need to find those, and Nicole, what you said about the money issue, right? It's I remember when MPI changed their first diversity effort to the business case around all of these issues. We need to get this to be right now a major issue, because people's lives have been in danger and are more so now. And so maybe it's sending those pictures, Jolene, and we send them and we say, why aren't we speaking out? I'm not afraid to do that. I don't, something has to change. And
when we like to see it, right, sometime in our lifetime, to see some tangible action. I mean, the one thing at my company, Microsoft, finally has an API leader who's doing well too. It's not enough to be an API leader. Then you're under the microscope, because if you don't do well, which many CEOs don't do well, right? Then they're just like, they blame it on you possibly for being Asian. So yeah. I think that's, we have to look at that. Pepsi has had a woman API leader. So those, again, are the examples, but they're unfortunately too far and few between. So I would love to see something happen in our lifetime. Anybody else with closing comments while we close it down?
Well, I just wanted to mention, it is such a struggle, like these events, all of us were promoting this, right? And we have my friend, my mom on the call, James here, who I met the other day, Lenore, who's in my Asian allies. And, and so there's so few people who care. It is so hard. And so, I just feel like we got to find more Jones out there and James out there who are in position, because, so there's nothing. I guess I was just venting that it's pulling teeth. We work so hard.
Yeah, Jolene is activising right now. And so she's had that, which is, we have large channels, but they don't respond to it. Let's all do this. Let's just either close with whatever reflection that you have from today. I can tell you this, that I met a gentleman at this presentation summit, white Caucasian, white hair. And I started talking about something around Paper Sun. Oh, he was helping me review one of these slides, by the way. So let me see if I can go back and show you this slide. He helped me redesign this slide, okay, with this impact of this white, because he's a PowerPoint expert. And then we talked about it. I told him why I was doing this. This is for a StopAAPIHate program. And he goes, you don't have to tell me. And I said, why? And he goes, he rattled off a whole series. He is on the committee for a Japanese sister city for his city, and he's helped other APIs, and he said it, and he knew all the data, all the facts, and I was really impressed by that. And I told him about this program, and he says, I want to help. So as we develop such as visual materials, and possibly in the ally part, Joan, I would love for you to meet this gentleman. I think the two of you, and of course Trevor, would just hit it off. So that's my closing statement. Anybody else would like to close today?
I want to again thank you, John. You're our, I don't know what to call you, our, I don't know.
Champion.
Yeah. And so we could not have done this. And I think for all of us, because we showed up and we worked hard and it matters. And so we don't need more Jones. We just
we do.
We absolutely do.
Okay, so here's the charge. Everybody go create a Joan, right? So go literally have people watch this. It'll be available to be seen, and then talk to them about how do you say to them directly, what will you do to change things? Yeah. And that's what we can do.
Thank you, Joan. Anybody else? And Nicole says, I want to be a Joan when I grow up, by the way.
I wanted to say that I was just expressing to my friend that my friend John, has coordinated this thing and all this time, and people are kind of in or they're out, and then they can't make it, then it's new person, and like rehashing again and again. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm okay, because this is interesting and I'm learning about, working with people. But so it's a really neat experience. And I think that hearing how people kind of were in and out and the different views, of different Asians, we all have different perspectives. And it's been a great experience to meet everybody and learn how groups work, like when I'm not running them, and we're all volunteers. Yeah. So I just appreciate that you all put your time into this, because I'm full-time doing this, and a lot of times I feel like I'm alone. So it was nice that you are believers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jolene. And Jolene was here from the very, very beginning, just so you all know, and has put in a lot of time with that. So again, thank you again for that, Joan. Anybody else? And Jolene too, we could tell you some behind the scenes stories, but we'll do that later. It's hard work. It's the work. Everybody will tell you. Anybody who does the work, it's the work. Nash or Kevin, closing words.
Yeah, I would say this was a great start, but let's keep the conversation, dialogue, and research going. And thanks for inviting me to be part of the group. I'll be really honest, you know, when you said that Joan was on the group, I said, okay, that was a level of validation for me. So I you know, besides working with you, John, you know, you're a master producer, which I appreciate. So thank you for inviting me to be part of the group. I hope this is just the beginning and we can continue the dialogue.
Beautiful. Thanks again. And again, Kevin, thanks for the one piece, which is just answering the call, all right, which is another API in the field just asked. And Kevin was warm from the beginning. You know, if you could have been a fly on the wall in that first meeting that Kevin and I had, like we understood a lot in a short amount of time, and I appreciated that. Nash?
No, you know what? Nothing else needs to be said. You know, this is the start. This is the start. So let's keep things rolling, take what we learned today and apply it.
Yeah. Yes, excellent. Josh?
Nash, you are an expert at improvisation. I would just like to say you are wonderful when all that happened. So thank you. And that trick, I want you to come and do my dental floss. Thank you.
Yeah, again, if you haven't seen any of Nash's work, you should. He's been on Penn and Teller and many other international magic shows. And the best part, too, I've seen Nash over his career, at least over the last decade. He's really working. How do we use speaking and magic, right, as a way to teach or learn? And so Nash has really started to move his programs more towards this. And I appreciate that's why I invited him. He was kind of a little bit like, I don't know if I have anything to say, right? And it's like, I said, look, you have the skill. Let's try and find a way to use it. And I hope the audience enjoyed that piece there too, because that is, you saw in those categories we're having education and entertainment, and they're interwoven together. Besides what Nicole is saying about the money, I think through those different avenues, that's what we need to use, is the skills we have to make a change. So with that, I'm going to close it down. I'm John Chen. This is my beautiful panel. We are now API event profs, which includes allies. Please join the group. Tell people about this. We're going to email this broadcast to you as soon as we clean it up and put it on YouTube. And look forward. Please see if you can make time for the upcoming 3 events. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.